Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe, football is back. The Sun Devils had a much-needed break over their bye week coming exactly in the middle of this 2023 season. They kind of came in reeling 1-5, a couple close calls in terms of games that they perhaps should have won, but probably most importantly, it's a chance to kind of recharge and get healthy.
Yeah, that's huge. That's important. That's what the bye week should be for. Seems like ASU was able to take advantage in that regard. And while we were just sitting around waiting for the next week to come for ASU to travel up to Washington, which of course is going to happen this weekend, a wild weekend in the Pac-12 conference, a little bit of a separation Saturday when you got games like Washington beating Oregon, USC taking a loss, a 29-point comeback that Colorado yielded. There were some wild games out there. It was kind of a good day just to be a fan and kick back and watch it happen and not have another game to focus on.
Absolutely. And but the Sun Devils are back in action this Saturday, and they've got a Herculean task ahead of them as they're heading up to Seattle to face those Huskies that took down Oregon and are now number 5 in the AP poll. It's the second time in a month that the Sun Devils will tangle with the AP number 5 team. It's going to be a pretty steep battle, but as we mentioned, ASU got a little bit healthier over the break. We'll dive into that here in a moment. We'll also be kind of breaking down that matchup and looking ahead with some great guests and some of the Sun Devil players themselves.
And before we jump into the news, a huge shout out, of course, to our wonderful friends at Jones Auto Group, which you know by now. They've been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years. They've got multiple locations across the state, and they are as strong as it gets when it comes to their participation in the NIL game, their support of Sun Devil athletics and the entire ASU community. You know that by supporting them, that's how they can do what they do. So when you're in the market for a new ride, if you're even kicking the tires on the idea, get with them, talk about it. If there's anything that is possibly even holding you back from purchasing a car, anything you're concerned about, credit issues, anything like that, get in touch with our guy, Parker Jones. I'm going to give you his contact information once again. If you didn't save it last week, save it this week so we can get that moving along, because he is your guy if you're looking to upgrade your ride. As you know, at Jones Auto Group, they treat the Sun Devil community like family, and they'll take care of you just that same way. If you're curious about tax advantages that you can receive by getting a new ride from Jones Auto Group, that's a very big deal when you're buying a car. That's another advantage that they can present to you. So pull out your phones if you got them already. You're listening on a cell phone. I guarantee it. Watch it on YouTube on a cell phone. Get in your contacts. Put this in there. Parker Jones. You know how to spell it. You're a smart Sun Devil, right? He's not just the owner and GM, but a third-generation Sun Devil, just like you, a die-hard Sun Devil. 602-881-8998. Once again, that's 602-881-8998. That's his cell. He wants to hear from you. Shoot him a text. Give him a holler if you're in the market for a new ride, and you can check out their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, Joe, let's dive into some of the top headlines. And this is probably something that is great for a lot of Sun Devil fans to hear. I know you're a big fan of this. A late afternoon, late October kickoff. Washington State's coming to town October 28th. It's going to be a 5 p.m. kickoff, TV on the Pac-12 network, but it's the right time of year, and the long-term forecast, it's going to be an amazing night.
Yeah, and so that's awesome time to have a kickoff. I kind of like that. I always like things like, all right, if I could just write the book, what would the perfect kickoff time be? Because, if you're talking about the tailgating, you want to get a good 3 hours in. I think 3 hours is a good, reasonable tailgate for a big game. And if you have something like a 3 p.m. kickoff, which the kickoff is cool, that puts you there at about noon. That gives you not so much time to get some things done. Like me, like get to the gym. You got to run some errands before you get the big game. Basically, if you're like a heavy tailgater, like our boys, Crafty Devils and all them, it's a big day. It's a full day. So anything productive, you got to get it done before the game. What I'm saying here is 5 o'clock kickoff. That gets you in, at the stadium area early afternoon. And then, you're done by 8, 9 o'clock. From the media side of things, it's not a post midnight endeavor. So it'll be awesome. The sun will still be up, to a particular degree for the majority of, I don't know, the first quarter, first half, something like that. You'd think, right? So, something like that. So when does the sun go down these days?
It's about like 5:30, 5:45.
All right, first quarter, something like that.
Maybe they bust out the glow-in-the-dark jerseys and get some greater use out of them. It's still kind of, there are the Ghost Edition, and so it is the Halloween, like 3 days
they probably
Halloween.
won't do that. Yeah, because they probably won't do that against Arizona, right? Because that usually is traditional. Oregon would make sense though, because it would be like the the gimmicky jerseys against probably gimmicky jerseys.
Oh, that's true, and the glow in the dark effect on the numbers was kind of green. I don't know if you want to do that. Interesting. Options.
We'll get the mysterious people from Uniformity who we don't know who runs that account because it's all mystery. Maybe they'll be able to unveil some information there. But yeah, I always got the firm stamp of approval on 5 p.m. October-November kickoff.
All right. So importantly here, as we mentioned, Sun Devils had a chance to heal up and not and kind of reduce the injured list as it had grown all throughout the first half of the season. Some good news at the most important and most ravaged position here so far, the offensive line. And ASU, of course, had been down a number of key contributors there, and had kind of been having to mix and match and play some guys, including true freshman Sean Naa got the start against Colorado at left guard. But as Kenny Dillingham said, hopefully, and we will track this throughout the course of the week during practice, but hopefully starting left tackle Isaiah Glass is able to come back in action. Versatile lineman Cade Briggs, the Texas Tech transfer, is also hopefully back this week. Left guard Sione Finau is listed as questionable, but just the idea of getting some healthy bodies to help the rotation, to help the depth, because at certain points near the end of that first half of the season, ASU was having to play 5-6 linemen when you really want to go with 8 or 9.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how you slice it, to have more offensive linemen in the mix, that's a big thing, especially when they're guys that are, projected starters, experienced players. And when you look back at things, of course, the offensive line has been an issue, and that's against some teams like the likes of USC, Colorado, that have very good offenses, but poor defenses. When you look toward the end of the schedule, you got teams like UCLA, Oregon, and even Arizona. And if you're not paying attention, those teams are all, including the third one I mentioned, they're all playing some defense right now. So you get to that later portion of the season, if you can hopefully healthier on the offensive line, you're going to be doing yourself a number of favors. Basically what I'm saying is ASU has not faced the best defenses that it'll play this year. Maybe it's already faced some of the best offenses, including this week. That's going to be the number one, of course, but it hasn't played the best defenses it's going to play. So you got to get as many men out there as you possibly can on offense, especially on the line.
Another physical possible return for the Sun Devil offense is running back to Carlos Brooks, who the Sun Devils hope to get back either this week or next week. So his return is pretty imminent, whether it is this week or next. He was a guy in the first couple weeks of the season, pretty key component with his physical running, his blocking as well, helped open some holes for Cam Skattebo. And of course, the run game has not been performing up to snuff for the Sun Devils over the last 6 weeks or so. Cam Skattebo is doing all he can do, but that offensive line, in part due to the injuries, has just not been able to get going. But having another physical runner there could be helping that the backfield.
Yeah, Brooks is a pretty key piece there. He showed quite a bit of flash in the opportunities that he had. Nothing out of this world, but he made the most of his opportunities. That's something that you get that momentum and you get that spirit going, and that's something that could lead to some outcomes. Do I expect this run game to be set the world on fire from this point forward? Not necessarily, but again, like the offensive line rather, to get capable bodies out there, out on the field and off the sidelines, that's a win in itself.
All right, so switching over to the defense, a couple updates, or one notable update by omission. No update yet on Trey Brown, the veteran linebacker. So it looks like Tate Romney and Caleb McCullough will be the starters again this upcoming week. But hopefully Trey is able to get back in the lineup down the stretch for the Sun Devils. Kenny Dillingham did mention that Jordan Clark, who did play about half the snaps against Colorado, obviously one of the key parts of this defense and one of the key leaders on this team in the locker room as well, should still battling back from injury, not 100%, but he is expected to be out there again on Saturday against the Huskies.
Trey Brown, you hope to get him out there as soon as humanly possible. And I'm certain he wants to be out there, obviously, immediately. And he's probably looking at this week, wishing he could be out there because he was at Washington State. Washington's their rival, and then the Cougars are right after there. So these are two games that I'm sure he's going to be chomping at the bit to get out there. So if it doesn't happen this week, I'm sure he's going to really want to get out there against his former team.
All right. So, of course, this is first and foremost a football show, but we also talk a great number of sports, and, we'll be diving into a bunch of them here as the winter season opens up. And one of those is, of course, basketball. We'll be talking some hoops here and covering, bringing you that coverage as we have in recent seasons. But some late news, Joe, a roster addition here as we are just a couple weeks away from the tip-off of this 2023-2024 season. ASU gets a commitment from guard Jose Perez, 6'5", just 1 year left. A guy who's had a bit of a journey throughout his career.
Yeah, these things happen, in college sports, but it's happening just about everywhere these days. So he spent some time at West Virginia, but didn't necessarily play there last season. And I guess I don't even honestly know the crux of the issue that he had as far as what put him in a position where he could not continue along at West Virginia, but he was a late addition here to this class. Spent the early part of his career at Manhattan, a pretty high scorer, averaged 18.9 points per game in 29 games that he played over the course of the 21 to 22 season. So this guy has the ability to score the ball. This is huge for ASU, not just because he can score, but I don't think there's been news that's officially announced it, but Adam Miller, a guard that transferred to ASU this year, is one of those guys that the NCAA is going to not give a crap about and not allow athletes to play the sport that they're in school to play because he's transferred twice. And the NCAA is a bunch of bonehead idiots that decides to pick and choose what hills they want to die on. So what I'm saying here is the expectation is that Adam Miller is not going to be eligible to play this season, going to have to redshirt. So to be able to get a guard in, and Miller's a guy who has double-digit scoring potential as well, to bring Perez in at this stage in the game is huge, because ASU starts its season here in just a couple weeks. Now folks might be asking, okay, how is the school year's already started? We're in mid-October. How is this possible? It's my understanding on things that I've gathered that there are different sessions on the academic calendar that they're kind of right on the cusp of that, where you can get in and potentially be academically eligible for the beginning of the season. I think that is something maybe to keep an eye on, but at least it seems like there's quite a bit of hope there.
Yeah, Session B enrollee, so he should be good to go for the opener. And as you mentioned, this is a guy that is, was at West Virginia, a school that's had some basketball success, but it was denied immediate eligibility inside out the 2022-2023 seasons. Some stuff behind the scenes there that led to his departure after he went and spent that year and earned his degree. But yeah, he bounced around Gardner Webb, Marquette, and then Manhattan, where he had great success. You mentioned the numbers there. That's a guy that's going to have some value for the Sun Devil team, and also can read between the lines. Adam Miller is not expected to be kind of eligible immediately for this season. So another guard addition for Bobby Hurley.
So I guess he has a degree.
He has a degree.
Okay,
so
I'm thinking it through. I haven't gotten into the full depth of the transaction. It's still a very new thing. I think it was just yesterday. Because I was like, he's bouncing around. Are we going to just have the same thing happen again? Probably it would be. I'm sure obviously the staff vetted this whole situation, so it's comical for me to even bring it up. But it's like, you got to even ask these days.
Yeah, and so I believe he also committed to Bobby Hurley on his 25th birthday. So happy birthday, and welcome to Tempe. And also head over to devilsdigest.com. Hoder Bino did a good interview with ASU's newest backcourt addition. So a lot of good stuff there as well. So it's solidifying the roster is, it's kind of a weird times now in college sports. Your roster is not necessarily solidified just a couple weeks out of the season. Some good news on other sports, Joe. Some, this has been kind of the joke for a while, but this is a program that's continued to build and build and build. But this might be, signs of a hockey school. The great new Mullet Arena, and hockey hosted number 15 Merrimack to open up the season. Swept them. That's good stuff.
It was awesome times. I was out there on Saturday night. It was a great deal, a real exciting game. It was 2-2 going in the late stages of the third period, and ASU racked off a couple goals at the end to claim it. And the Friday game went into overtime. Some exciting hockey down there. Now, we'd be remiss because I don't think we mentioned it last week. And I don't care if it's exhibition. I don't care if it's against a club team. But let it be known, if you don't know already, that ASU beat the University of Arizona by a score of 16-0. I enjoy the game of hockey very, very much. Love going to games. I am still a novice at it and learning some of the intricacies about it. But I am given to understand that beating a team 16-0 in the game of hockey, I know that you're very much an expert at this, is pretty rare and a sign of quite a bit of dominance.
I've been playing hockey since I was 14, and I've played several hundred, maybe a couple thousand games. Never have I been a part of a game that has put up 16. And that's some rec level stuff where you expect high scoring. The Sun Devils took care of business against the Wildcats.
There was a running thing for almost to the end. I don't think it ended up this way, but deep into the game, ASU had as many, if not more, goals than U of A had shots on goal. So that's, like I said, it's a club team. You're supposed to rattle them, but hey, when it's the U of A, you want to put that foot on the gas. And that's what Greg Powers said. He was on, the Healy Anderson show, not with this Healy, but the bigger one, the better one. And he had some awesome sound bites there. And it's a similar thing because we all know Coach Powers, he has no love for that team down south, to say the very least. So going into that exhibition game, it was not just a warm-up situation. It was not a go through the motions kind of situation. It was awesome. So, you put that to rest in these first two games, and ASU, in the national rankings right now. And things are rolling. It's an exciting thing. I know there's still a lot of folks that I know that haven't been out to Mullet Arena for anything whatsoever, whether it's hockey, wrestling, or the other sports that they host there. Incredible facility, always a great environment. ASU hockey really, draws a great crowd. It's a fun thing. If you have the opportunity to go out and check them out, strongly recommend. Real exciting sports in a great facility. Once again, if you haven't been there yet, or even if you have, it is a good time all around.
Yeah, number 18 in the new USCHO rankings. That's pretty good. It's ASU's first time in the top 25 since 2020. So Greg Powers continues to build a quality program out there. And yeah, when you're putting up 2 touchdowns and a couple of 2-point conversions against the Wildcats, let alone sweeping the number 15 team in the country in your home barn, things are going well. So Sun Devils is an exciting team. Get out there and support them. And speaking of a team that has played some games at Mullet Arena and is now in the national rankings, continuing to do really good things. Be remiss if we didn't mention the volleyball team, up to number 17 in the new polls after a big-time road win at Oregon, taking down the number 5 Oregon Ducks. It's the first top 5 win for the volleyball program in 10 years, since 2013. So JJ Van Niel has got those ladies playing well.
And that's something that you love to see. I mean, I believe that's a program, and I'll admit I'm not a volleyball aficionado, but this is something that you love to see. I know the program has just had been in flux a little bit, coaches and things like that. So when you see things going along in a positive direction, that's awesome to see. And they've had some success. They had a great outing at Mullet Arena a couple weeks ago. So, once again, you gotta tip your cap to all the athletes and coaches for that program and see what they can do as things move along. I know there's some talent within this conference, and they're competing with the best of them. And it just love to see that at any level for Arizona State, because, though there have been dark days and the dark days still kind of exist still with football, I know that there are people that have their complaints in other sports. When you see some of these other ones that are really starting to rise to the occasion, that's something you can definitely be proud of.
Yeah, so definitely check out your Speak of the Devils feed, because I'll be doing an interview with head coach JJ Van Niel, talking about how he was able to kind of get this program up and running to a 18-2 mark to start off year one. I will also bring you at the end of this episode, after our game predictions, a little teaser of that episode as well. Now, before we dive into a couple conversations with some current and future Sun Devils, I want to bring you a good word from the good brand, HomeField Apparel. Yes, we've talked to you all season long about their premium licensed vintage collegiate apparel and the 24-piece ASU collection that includes amazing t-shirts, hoodies, crew necks, joggers, quarter zips, so much more. It is the most comfortable stuff you will wear, good for all times of year. And this Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, they are dropping something on their site as part of their homecoming series that's going to be an absolutely must have for any Sun Devil fan. Holiday season's coming up. This is going to be something that you're going to want, and probably maybe for some others, but definitely for yourself as well. Best of all, you can get 15% off your purchase at homefieldapparel.com by using our offer code SOTD23. Just pop over to HomeField Apparel on Friday afternoon, drop in that offer code, put this amazing new item. Trust me, if you follow their social media, you probably have a pretty good idea of what it is. It's going to be absolutely worth it for you. Again, SOTD23 gets you 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. Now, after Tuesday's practice, I had a chance to catch up with a couple of the pieces on ASU's offense. First up, you'll hear from running back Cam Skattebo, obviously the heart, soul, and kind of a burgeoning folk hero of this Sun Devil fan base. They've been really impressed, obviously, with his running, his receiving, his throwing, his punting. This guy does it all. In the bye week has done him some good, as he's been a little banged up with this heavy workload. So first off, you'll hear from Cam. All right, so coming off the bye, obviously time to kind of refresh, physically. Obviously, guy had a tremendous workload in the first half. How you feeling after a week off?
Good, actually. After the week off was good. Before the week off, I was struggling a little bit, but after the week off, I felt a lot better, for sure.
Was it frustrating at all to, obviously kind of be limited? Coach mentioned, obviously it's dinged up a little bit, but, some illness as well, just to maybe not be out there as much as you'd like to against Colorado?
For sure. I mean, 2 weeks before that, I played 70 and 75 snaps, so, and then coming to Colorado, I only played 44. It was a little drenching mentally, but I understood the circumstances and where I was at that moment during that game, and I just took what they gave me and try to do my best.
You kind of done everything in the first half of the season. When you look back at the first 6 games of Sun Devil, what really kind of jumps out to you, and how do you evaluate your performance?
Just the coaches trusting me. They put me in situations, and I've succeeded in most of them. I obviously have to get better every day, but they're doing a great job keeping me in the right position to be successful.
Obviously, the wins and losses aren't where you guys want them, but some close competitive games. What's your take on kind of the mindset right now of this team, knowing that you guys were really close and kind of, as Coach Dillingham said, kind of on the brink of winning, but just once that happens, it kind of will fall into place. But just being on the precipice, not there quite yet.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the teams are getting better. We're getting better. We just have to keep grinding, keeping our head on straight. We can't have guys flare off into different paths. We all have to stick together and continue to get better, even though we understand that the teams are just getting better and better. Everyone just staying on the same page is a must right now.
Going into a hostile atmosphere, what are you expecting, from Husky Stadium, the crowd noise, everything, and playing up a top 5 team in the country?
I'm excited for it. Earlier I was talking to the other guy. He said same question, and I absorb the energy. You can't look at the energy as a negative effect on you. Go in there and treat those fans like they're cheering for the game, not just that team. So I like to absorb the energy and not just look at it as a negative.
When you look at that Husky D, what are some of the things that kind of stand out about what they like to do and some of their strengths?
They're good. They're solid. They're well coached. They got good athletes. There's not really a specific thing that they're great at and they're bad at. They're just solid and are really good.
What are some of the keys that you guys need to pull off and execute to get that win over number 5?
We have to be perfect. We got injuries. We have guys down. The guys that step up have to know what they're doing, and we got to succeed in all aspects on defense and on offense, throwing the ball and running the ball. So we just have to be successful and be perfect almost.
And more positive note, what's it been like just seeing the kind of the fan reaction to you, kind of almost like a kind of folk hero status of just the guy who does everything and really kind of become a fan favorite and just through 6 games.
That's awesome. I love the support. I didn't realize Sun Devil Nation was this big and this solid, and they got my back through most. That's what I respect for Arizona State fans and everything. So they got my back and I got theirs.
And now you hear from freshman wide receiver Kaleb Black, a guy that came over from Texas as part of the recruiting class and kind of wowed the coaches and has earned a spot in the 2 deep for the Sun Devils so far this season. Actually saw his first game action against Colorado. Did not catch a pass, but this is a guy that is looking to make his mark in Tempe this year and for years to come. All right, so half a season of college ball under your belt. How do you think things are going so far? How do you liking the adjustment to major college football?
For me personally, I think it's going pretty well. Getting acclimated to college ball. Getting acclimated to new schedule, new time. Just getting acclimated to being a pro.
And then against Colorado, seeing the first playing time of the year, what were some of when you're taking the field for the first time there, what are the thoughts going through your head?
Just do everything, all my assignments right, and play to the best of my ability. There's a lot of people watching, and my coach trusts me enough to put me in the game, so I wanted to show what I could do.
Overall, when you kind of look at the tape, obviously no catches, but when you guys looked at kind of your performance, what did you take away from that?
I can play in the game for sure. I know I could compete in the game. It was a little fast at first, but then it kind of slowed up for me. So, and I don't think I did bad at all. Without getting the ball, I think I still got open. So.
So far, you're still seeing time, with the 2 deep and as part of the offense there. Is this kind of what you were expecting and kind of this first part of your freshman year, kind of be a part of this?
Honestly, it's kind of what I hoped for, not expected. I kind of expected. I didn't know what to expect, honestly, but I knew I was gonna work hard and try to be one of the hardest working people in here and get my way up there.
Obviously, the win-loss record is not what you guys wanted through the first half of the year. What do you think is kind of like the mindset of the team right now? Going through some struggles collectively. Obviously, injury is a big factor for the team as well. Just what are your thoughts on just kind of the collective mindset and the mentality of this team right now?
I think right now the mindset of the team is just keep working. And tune out all the outside noise because it really don't matter. All we got is each other. And only people that's really gonna care about us is us. So we just gotta keep going to work every single day.
And then position coach Rashad Samples, what kind of impact has he had on you earlier in your career?
He's had a lot of impact. He's been a big been a big help for me as far as like pushing me over that edge. You know what I'm saying? He's been motivating and pushing me so far. So I feel like without him, it'll probably be with him. It pushed me a lot more. I can't find a word, but like, you know what I'm saying, it pushed me a lot more to do things that you know what I'm saying, I know I could do, but it pushed me more.
What's it like now that you guys have a quarterback? And after the first couple weeks of the season, obviously it seemed like a different quarterback there because for injuries, but now that Trent's back there, what's it been like just him developing that rapport with you guys?
It's been good, you know what I'm saying, getting reps with him every day, just getting used to it, just getting our chemistry together. It's been good getting chemistry in a relationship. We're a different dude, you know what I'm saying?
When you look ahead to the Washington defense, what are some things that the Huskies like to do that you kind of jump out to on film?
Honestly, they like to play a lot of man, so we just don't have to win our one-on-ones. Beat them that way.
6 games left the back half of the season. What are some of the goals that you've set forth that you want to accomplish by the end of the year?
Hopefully getting some more playing time. Hopefully being able to grab the ball, getting the end zone a couple times. You know what I'm saying? Get some stats up there.
And now you'll hear from ASU tight end commit, part of the 2024 class, Jaden Fortier, who's playing his prep ball up in Oregon. Very eager to get down here in the desert. He has got some good things to say about why he chose ASU, Kenny Dillingham's vision, and playing for Jason Mons. All right, here with ASU tight end commit, Jaden Fortier. First off, some big news recently, elevated to a 4-star status. How does it feel to get that 4th star?
It definitely feels great. Just to know that all my hard work finally paid off. That's been one of my goals since I started high school. Started my freshman year. I've always wanted to become a 4-star and just be put into that elite category. So it definitely feels good. It's a great feeling.
Is that something that, high-level recruits like yourself, put a whole lot of stock in as kind of like a validation, or is that kind of just, a nice to have and kind of maybe something in the background?
Obviously, it doesn't change too much. I'm still going to be myself at the end of the day, hard work and dedication. But the validation piece definitely helps just to know that other people are believing in me and think that I'm, a top recruit in the country.
Now, you've had a big season so far. Where have you seen kind of the biggest gains and improvements in your own game through the first part of your senior season?
I think the biggest thing for me was just the off-season work that I put in, working on getting faster and more explosive. And I think that pops on film for me, at least. Just Coach Mons has been telling me that I look 10 times more explosive than I did in my junior year film. So just being able to take the top off of defenses and making people miss more this year, running through people, being agile, I think that's the biggest thing that changed from this year to last year.
What have been some of your favorite moments so far this season?
I mean, last week was our homecoming game. We ended up beating a team that we haven't beaten 5 years, 14-0 out. So that was a big game in the rain. Obviously had fun at homecoming. So it was good.
So obviously, you're a guy with a lot of schools coming after you, and you made the commitment to ASU and chose that, that Tempe would be in your future. What were some of the things overall when you looked at ASU, the football program and the school, that made it the right place for you?
I've always loved Tempe, even with the old staff. I thought really highly of Arizona State, obviously, and just the state in general. And then once Coach Kenny Dillingham obviously got the head coaching job and I saw that the staff that he brought in, I was just super excited. They're all ready to go and they're excited. They want to be in Tempe. They want to be at ASU and they care so deeply about their players. Because I was at the USC game and just the energy that they brought and how they care for one another. And they're one big family. So that's the biggest thing that stuck out to me. And obviously just the situation. Their tight end room is deep. They're all tightly knit and they're good friends on and off the field, obviously in their family. So I'm excited to join that tight end room.
Now, as you mentioned, your recruitment by ASU started under the prior staff, and now you look over that time frame, starting with that prior staff to now under Coach Kenny Dillingham. How has your view of the program kind of evolved during that time frame?
I mean, obviously they're just way more tight knit, super close. Like I said earlier, they're a big family. Coach Kenny Dillingham, obviously he brought in a great staff. Like I said earlier, they care deeply about one another. And I think the biggest thing is how just collective they are. It's not, it's about me. It's about everyone in the program. The program always gets put first over there. And that's what I really love because I'm a team first guy and I want to see the team win before myself. And I think Coach Kenny Dillingham's doing a great job of that.
Kind of on a similar note, when you get to know Kenny Dillingham through this process, obviously his resume in terms of, being an offensive mastermind kind of speaks for itself. But when you look and kind of, the program that he's trying to build and kind of the vision for the future, what really kind of jumps out the most to you in terms of, what the future could look like here in Tempe?
I've just been watching the games. Obviously, I tune in every week and just his play calling excites me. ever since he took over calling the plays, what they've been running and how they're involving the tight end, and obviously just their play calling in general. It's obviously structured around a lot of guys to get the playmakers the ball, but at the end of the day, they're having fun with it and they're making plays and they're, having fun. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the future and I'm excited to get down there.
When you're down here, Jason Mons will be your position coach, obviously a legend here on the high school football scene, now in his first year as a Sun Devils tight end coach, a guy that also kind of has a similar offensive pedigree. What are some of the things that kind of stick out about Jason Mons, and what excites you about him being your future position coach?
Coach Mons, he's a great dude, and I think he's just really personable. He understands obviously the high school background and how hard the recruiting process is, and he just never let me lose any faith, obviously. And, he's been a super good dude. And he got to know my mom and my brother, which goes a long way with me. He was actually at our game homecoming week. So he came out here and made the trip out with his wife, Sarah. So it just shows how deeply he cares about not only me, but just people in general, and how he wants to get to know people and make sure that they see the best side of him.
And so any ASU fans out there who might not have yet seen you in action or caught some film online, give our listeners a scouting report on what you bring to the field and into an offense.
I think I just bring a big body pass catcher that can move and, go get extra yards, truck some dudes off me and get even more yards, but still have the ability to take the top off of defense. And, obviously Coach Mons is going to work with me with the blocking aspect because I've been a receiver my whole life, but he's excited about the challenge and so am I. So I just can't wait to get down there.
I believe you're looking to be a summer enrollee as you are trying to help your team chase back-to-back state basketball titles. How has basketball kind of influenced and helped your football game?
As you said, we're going for our third state chip this year. But I think the biggest thing is just the competitive edge, making sure that I never lose it. Obviously, basketball is one of the most competitive sports you can play. And especially when you're good and you have a target on your back, it brings the best out of you and your teammates. And I also think the family part of it, football, you're relying on 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, special teams. But basketball, it's more tight knit. You got 5 dudes on the court at one time, and you got to trust them with your life. So I trust all my teammates, and I'm hoping we can win the third one this year.
Yeah, you think you're ready for making the transition from the Pacific Northwest down here to the deserts where it gets a little warm?
I definitely think so. I personally love warm weather, obviously. So that was another thing that went into my decision, is just, going from Oregon to cold and wet and rainy to sunshine all the time. That sounds great to me.
So when you look at, over the course of the next few months before next summer, before you get down here and put on that maroon and gold for the first time as a Sun Devil, what are some of the things that you're looking to work on and to improve and to prepare yourself for when you make that jump up to major college football?
The biggest thing is just making sure that I maintain good weight and keep putting on good weight, and while also being explosive and keep getting faster and making sure that I can be my best once I get down in June.
And then, of course, ASU making the big move from the Pac-12 to when you get here to the Big 12. What are your thoughts on kind of that conference move, going from kind of the more West Coast centric to kind of, more kind of the center of the country?
It was definitely weird at first when I first heard it, because obviously I grew up watching the Pac-12. That's been my conference since I was a little kid. But I'm excited for the challenge, and I'm excited to see how the coaches react. Obviously, they're super excited about it, and I just can't wait to start playing, even better teams than in the Pac-12.
Well, awesome, Jaden. Thanks so much for taking the time out. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, sir.
Before we jump into our Know Your Enemy segment to learn a little something about the number 5 ranked Washington Huskies, you're never an enemy when you walk into the doors of Burrito Express. It's a family-owned business that began in 1995 with a combination of authentic recipes, competitive prices, and a comfortable atmosphere. That all makes dining with Burrito Express a unique experience. You always see their passion. I mention that every week, and I think it's important that everyone knows how involved Burrito Express is with the Sun Devil community, Sun Devil athletics, the athletes themselves, the NIL deals that they have with a number of different athletes. That's an investment that they've made into the Sun Devil community. And if you ask me, I believe that should be rewarded back to them tenfold by your support. And it's easy when the food is as incredible as it is. There are no misses on the menu. You could throw a dart at it with your eyes blindfolded, and you'll get something that'll be the best meal that you've had in months. They've got 6 Valley locations, 2 in Gilbert, 1 in Mesa, 1 in Chandler, 1 in Scottsdale. in their Tempe location near Rural and University, just about a half mile from Mountain America Stadium. So depending on the timing of things, when you get that next ball game coming in, like we were talking about for that Colorado game, if you're hitting those tailgates early in the day for that Washington State affair, get yourself some BE when you're heading out to the tailgates. They are open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. Some locations open as early as 6 a.m. during the week and 8 to 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. You can order online at theburritoexpress.com for pickup or delivery. And, of course, be sure to give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BurritoEXP and on TikTok at Burrito Express AZ.
Returning to the program now for this week's Know Your Enemy segment is Max Vrooman of UWDogpound.com to give us an insight into the number 5 Washington Huskies. First off, Max, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. Still riding high after Saturday.
What an incredible game that was, and just kind of capping off just an incredible year and a half for Kalen DeBoer, and just kind of rebuilding, revitalizing this Husky program into one of the nation's truly elite. What has enabled him to have not just kind of that spectacular debut a season ago, but to keep that momentum going on and even taking it to another level here in 2023?
Biggest thing was getting just about the entire band get back together. There was definitely a point last offseason when the season ended and it looked like, okay, well, there's a chance that Washington loses its offensive coordinator. Alabama came calling for Ryan Grubb. There's a chance that Michael Penix goes to the NFL, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Braylon Trice. They had all of these guys who were top performers last year, and there was a chance for all of them to turn pro, and I don't think anyone would have blamed any of them for choosing to do that. Instead, though, they pretty much universally chose to come back. Everybody who had eligibility just decided to stay. Ryan Grubb turned down the offer from Alabama. I guess some people would dispute whether or not he has an offer. Alabama likes to think that he didn't because they don't like getting turned down, but it seems like he probably did. And everybody chose to came back, and they were able to build off that. Everyone knew there was a chance to do something special, and so far they've looked like a team that is definitely capable of doing just that.
And of course, Michael Penix had a tremendous season a year ago, but seems like he's operating at a whole nother level now. The Heisman front runner by just about every logical account right now. Where have you seen Penix kind of elevate his game from that spectacular debut with the Huskies a year ago to what he's been doing through the first few games this year?
Yeah, I think when you look at the numbers, they're not actually that dramatically different from some of what he did last year. I think it's especially towards the end of the year once he really got going. But I think for one thing, the offensive line a little bit less veteran this year, but Penix still just his mastery of the offense. He just doesn't seem to get hit nearly as much for somebody who throws deep as much as he should. It's kind of stunning that he just has a knack for, hey, I know the blitz is coming over there. I'm going to get rid of it. And I know that I can take this last millisecond to wait to throw this ball, and I'm going to take it. And he just doesn't get sacked and is able to generally keep from making that negative play. There was still have a few moments where he gets a little overconfident, but when you're dealing with 3 receivers who realistically are going to be day 2 or day 1 draft picks in the NFL, probably a decent reason to be overconfident when you're throwing the ball to them. So he'll put it up sometimes. And there are sometimes, like against Oregon, there was an interception because there was a timing route where he threw the ball before the receiver made their break. The receiver fell down and it got easily picked. And that's going to happen sometimes when you have an offense that is predicated on timing as much as it is for Washington. But, the upside is that when the receiver doesn't slip, the defender does not have enough time to react to the ball, and they just turn around and the ball's there for the receiver and they're able to go. So generally he just has such command, such poise. Came out today, was going all over social media of Penix freestyling on the bench before leading the game-winning drive there, and he keeps his cool, he keeps his composure. He's as veteran as he can get, and he can make every throw. There's really outside of wanting him to be able to run for 80 yards for touchdown, he doesn't have that quite that. He's a little bit more mobile than he gets credit for, just because they don't ask him to do it. They'd much rather him stand in the pocket an extra second and scramble around. But other than that, he's about as good a college quarterback as you can get.
Even with Jalen McMillan banged up, just arguably the best wide receiver room in the country. You mentioned, just the future NFL dudes over there. What makes this group so deadly to defenses?
So, I mean, the one thing is that they have great running ability. Jamarcus Shepard came over from Purdue as the wide receiver coach when Kalen DeBoer took over, and Purdue, not necessarily known for getting a ton of talent, but he developed multiple All-Americans there, and he came over to Washington and took a bunch of guys who were high 4-stars with, I guess not a bunch, but Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan, both high 4-stars, and coached them up even more than Junior Adams, now the wide receiver coach at Oregon, was able to do. And just took them to the next level. They have the ability to run clean routes. They have the ability to break tackles. They have size. They have speed. All three of them 6'1" or taller. So there's really not a deficiency in any of their games. And so when that's the case, and you've got three of them out there running routes at the same time, math dictates you can't double cover all of them. So somebody's going to get open, and Penix is going to find him.
Obviously, the Huskies are such an elite passing team, but they have had success on the ground as well. What should a defense expect from the Washington ground game?
Generally, there's been a pattern up until this Oregon game last year where Washington will be a little bit balanced through maybe the first quarter. They'll run it a little bit, and then it'll get to a point where Ryan Grubb seemingly just says, "I'm just going to pass it all the time," sprinkle in a run play here or there, but especially between the 20s. They like to throw the ball. And then once it gets into the red zone and things are a little bit more condensed, that's where you're going to see a few more runs. But this year got off to a tough start in terms of the running game when Cameron Davis, who was expected to be the number one, out for the season a few weeks before the season started. So they turned to Dylan Johnson, the Mississippi State transfer, who was a big get, but was a little bit banged up. First game, he really just did not look good at all against Boise State. I think it was 12 yards on 7 carries. Looked slow, looked sluggish. They let him sit for the second game of the year against Tulsa, and since he's come back, I think he's averaging over 6 yards to carry. He's able to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a strong runner. He's not necessarily somebody who's going to break off an 80-yard touchdown run and take it to the house, but he definitely has enough speed to get to the edge if he has to, and he doesn't usually go down without dragging a defender for a couple of yards. So he's been the guy. Will Nixon has been the number 2, who has done a good job. Former wide receiver at Nebraska, who's come in and kind of been a running back, third down back for Washington. And they really like to stick to those two guys. Against Oregon, they went almost exclusively with Dylan Johnson, which was the first time we've seen that. But even though they've had their number one guy injured, Daniel Nagata from Arizona State hasn't been able to break through the rotation at all, which I think was a little bit of a surprise. So they may not necessarily have that guy who's going to be first team all conference, but there's definitely still some depth there.
What does a defense have to do to, obviously not stop the Huskies, but just kind of to limit the damage that this Washington offense can do?
Yeah, I think the main thing is find a way to pressure Michael Penix, which is easier said than done. But against Oregon, I think he was something like 5 of 12 for 31 yards when pressured. He missed his first 4 or 5 throws when pressured. He's just not necessarily a absolutely elite guy when you're able to get somebody who is actually able to get to him. So it's really about getting that quick pressure, particularly on the interior. Washington's had a few injuries along their offensive line. Starting center Mateo Mele is out for the year. Julius Buelow, who was they moved the right guard over to center, and the right guard should have been Julius Buelow. He's been out with an ankle sprain, so they've had a few injuries. They've been on their third string right guard essentially because of all of that. So if you can get in Penix's face early and get him to move off his spot and not kind of just sit back there and pick his spots, you have the potential to be able to disrupt him. If you can't do that, there's really not much you can do. You're not going to be able to cover all their receivers for as long as it is. The only thing that really has worked for some teams, Arizona tried dropping back, putting 7 or 8 defensive backs on the field and just kind of hoping that Washington wouldn't take the cheese and just run the ball and get 5-6 yards to carry. Washington put up a good number of yards per play against it. That explosiveness wasn't there when they just dropped back a lot of guys in coverage and let Washington go underneath and accumulate 11-12 play drives and shorten the game. But even when you do that, your hope is that, hey, Washington decides to go pass, and they make 1 or 2 small mistakes, or there's a holding call, I think through the first couple of games, there basically was Washington scored on like 90% of drives when they didn't have 2 penalties on the same drive. It was really just the only thing that could kill them was holding penalty and then a false start. And now it's 2nd and 25, and like, okay, now you've got a shot. But if it's 2nd and 5, you're just really don't have a chance unless there's a drop or just a miscue by Penix, which happens occasionally. He's not perfect, but it definitely doesn't happen often enough to slow Washington down much.
Now switching over to the defensive side of the ball, and it seems like the pass rush has kind of struggled a little bit. Just 7 sacks on the year. Bit surprising when you have talents like Braylon Trice and ZTF out there. What do you think's been kind of behind the causes of the kind of sluggish sack numbers?
Yeah, early in the season, there was kind of a thought of maybe because they faced a couple of rushing quarterbacks that the emphasis was on just kind of containing them in the pocket and not going all out on the rush. But it's just been a disappointment. Braylon Trice, according to Pro Football Focus last year, led the country with 70 pressures. This year, I think he's been through 6 games, so on pace for not even half that, essentially. And there hasn't been a real reason for that as far as people can really tell. I mean, I think defenses are putting maybe a little bit more emphasis on him, and he's still been good against the run, but he just hasn't shown that same burst. Meanwhile, Zion Tubola-Fatui, people may remember in 2020, had 7 sacks in 4 games in that abbreviated COVID season, looked like an All-American. Then he tore his Achilles, came back at the end of last year. Didn't quite look the same, but the hope was now he has a full off season that he's going to be ready to go. He had a couple of sacks earlier in the year, but so far he really has only shown one move the entire season. He's just tries to jump the snap count and rushes speed rush off the edge. And when he was racking up sacks back in 2020, he was somebody who had that bull rush and had a couple of different moves that he could put, and he just hasn't looked like quite the same player. It's unsure if that's the injuries or what. But beyond that, it was known that UW wasn't going to have a lot of depth on the edge for the pass rush, so it was going to fall on those two. But the thought was that those two were each going to be, 6+ sack guys, and right now it doesn't look like that's going to happen unless they really go on a tear the rest of the year.
What have you seen as some of the strengths of this Husky defense, and what are some areas where an opposing OC might want to try to scheme and attack?
So I think the big thing is they've been pretty good at preventing big plays, especially in the run game. I don't think they haven't given up a single run of 20+ yards so far this year, which last year against Arizona State, they let X kind of run all over them, especially for some big gains. They haven't really done that this year, but on the other side, they opposing offenses have been able to run successfully. When you look at success rate against the run and stuff rate, UW is near the bottom of the country in there. They are pretty good at keeping you from getting more than 5, 6, 7 yards, but they are generally willing to give you that at least 3 yards on just about every carry. But the big difference between last year is that they have Jabbar Muhammad this year on the outside at the cornerback position, who's been one of the best corners in the Pac-12 so far this year. Coming into the game against Oregon, he was leading the conference in opposing completion percentage against, coming over from Oklahoma State. So they really haven't been giving up a ton of explosives. They've been able to get a decent number of interceptions this year, especially compared to last year, where they almost never were able to get their hands on the ball as a defense. And it's really just kind of a okay to good unit pretty much all around. I think there's not a lot of players. I've gone through and done some kind of all conference lists, and I think Muhammad is really the only one that, maybe Osio, their middle linebacker, is the only other one who's really going to get all conference consideration at this point. Otherwise, you got a lot of average to above average, but not really very many exceptional starters on the unit, and they've got some depth. In terms of how you would attack the unit, I think being able to run consistently on first down. Again, I'll go to Arizona. They were able to have I think a 55% success rate against Washington, even though they didn't really get a lot of balls downfield. So if you want to take 5, 6, 7 yards at a time, you can grind against this Washington defense, and that has the double effect of keeping the Washington offense off the field. So I think really the way to go, try to go stack up possessions where you're able to have it go 8, 9, 10 plays, a little bit downfield at a time. Don't try to take too many shots unless they're there, which they occasionally are there, and really try to grind it out.
Obviously, guys like Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, Braylon Trice are pretty well known and stars in their own right. But who's a guy or two that might be a little bit under the radar, an X factor, if you will, that you think is going to play a big role in determining Saturday's outcome?
Yeah, I think I just mentioned Adefon Olufosio, who's their middle linebacker, who a couple of years ago, kind of similar to Zion Tupuola-Fatui, a lot of long names on Washington's defense. He had in that 2020 season, I think he was the number one linebacker in the country per Pro Football Focus, and then suffered a major injury. Took a year to come back. Came back at the end of last year. Wasn't quite himself, but this year has looked pretty close to himself. He's a former walk-on who quickly rose up the depth chart and was able to break through and claim a starting spot in his second year. And he's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He had Washington's only sack against Oregon last week. He had a pick six against Cal. He's their leading tackler. He's kind of the number one guy in the middle who really, if he has a really good game, can really control the game on defense for Washington.
Obviously, last week was a instant classic game, a huge emotional win, important win for the playoff hopes. So coming off of that emotional high, ASU comes to town just 1-5 on the season. Do you think that there's any risk of kind of like a hangover effect or overlooking a struggling Sun Devil squad?
I think there would be, except for the last time that this Husky team lost. It was in Tempe against Arizona State, right after they'd fired Herm Edwards. Everybody thought, well, this team is not going anywhere. They're not very good, and they came out. They absolutely carved up Washington's defense. A few breaks went against the Huskies, and they left that game 4-2, knocked them out of the rankings. I know that was a really tough loss for the team last year, and they turned around and again haven't lost since. So I think all that Kalen DeBoer is going to have to do is turn on that tape from last year and say, hey guys, you want some redemption here. And because it's a lot of the same team, I think they're going to respond to that. If that weren't the case, I would definitely be worried about this being a trap game or an emotional letdown game. There's also just the simple fact that Arizona State's kind of owned Washington for multiple decades at this point. I think we're 4-13 in our since the year 2000 against Arizona State, straight up, not good. And it hasn't even been very good in Seattle. We're 2-5 since then against the Sun Devils. So definitely, if there ever was going to be a team to falter against, it has traditionally been Arizona State. But just because of the fact that they lost to this team last year, you'd really hope that they can find the motivation to not look past them, because you can just turn on the tape and say, this is what happened when you look past them last year. So. And I think it's, if anything, Arizona State's looked a little feistier in the last few games than they were at this point last year. So hopefully a little bit more motivation.
Now, coming off that win over Oregon, do you get the sense, within the program or even just kind of the collective fan base, that the mentality now is playoff or bust? Or do you think it might be a little too early to get to that level of hype?
I think that from the fan base, there are definitely some who have that feeling. I think a lot of people are still kind of know that there's this gauntlet at the end of the year where Washington's going to have to play USC, then Utah, then Oregon State, then Washington State to close out the season. Plus, if everything goes right, also potentially a rematch against Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. And that's a heavy ask to have this team, go out of that stretch with only one loss. So I think from the fan base, I don't think people would necessarily say playoffs are bust, but at the same time, I'm sure there would be a lot of disappointment if this team ended up losing 2 games down the stretch, lost a Pac-12 title game. I think if they made a New Year's Six Bowl, I think most fans would still call it happy, but there would still be that little bit in the back of the mind saying, man, I don't know when the next time is that we're going to have this assembly of talent all on one team. In terms of the players, they were pretty outspoken before the season that they thought the Huskies had the best offense in the country, that they were a national title contender. So I think the confidence definitely is there from the players and from the team. They really, I think, have that mindset of our ceiling is a national title, and so there's no reason not to expect that. But I'm always somebody who's a little bit more guarded with my hopes and dreams in terms of that goes. So maybe I'm speaking a little bit from my own experience, but I'm sure there are definitely some folks out there who would be absolutely disappointed and if we didn't make the playoffs. But I don't think if you make a New Year's Six bowl, you can never really be disappointed. So.
No, looking at the future, obviously, this is the final season of the Pac-12, as we know. The ASU heading to the Big 12 and the Big 10 future for the Huskies. Since that announcement has come down, what's been kind of the feeling around the program about the kind of the dissolution of the conference and a future in the Big 10?
Yeah, I think most fans are probably disappointed in general that it turned out this way. I think there's a lot of love for the rivalries that have propped up for Washington between Oregon and Wazoo and just the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast in general. But at the same time, I think most Husky fans kind of knew the second that USC and UCLA left that if you wanted to potentially compete for national titles in the future, the move was to the Big Ten, not in the leftovers of the Pac-12. And so overall, I think a little bit of sadness, but still relief that they were able to get into the Big Ten. But looking forward, it's definitely going to be tough to compete at that level, considering they're getting kind of a half share to the rest of the Big Ten, and they're having to compete with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, now USC, Oregon, UCLA on a regular basis. It's going to make it tough. The 12-team playoff structure should help, and we'll see how much there's competition to be able to make some of those extra slots. But actually winning the conference now, it might be, and between that and the travel, it might be a little bit of careful what you wish for.
Well, Max, as always, great to talk to you and get your expertise and insight into the Washington Huskies. Encourage our folks to head over to uwdogpound.com, get some intel on ASU's opponent and a playoff contender there. Max, thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
When you feel that growl going on in your stomach and you need some grub that is run by true Sun Devils, check out the Spaghetti Shack. You already know by now, we talk about it all the time. They're not just owned and operated by die-hard Sun Devils and ASU alums. We're talking about ownership by a former Sparky the Sun Devil. That's passion. That's how it goes right there. Spaghetti Shack has 3 locations, one up in the cool temperatures of Pine Top, Arizona, and 2 in Tempe, including their new ASU Tempe location just about a mile from Mountain America Stadium. That's open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 to midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. We mentioned it last week. Be sure to check out their website, their social media. They've got some big changes, big improvements, expanding their menu. The grub that they've had for the couple of years that they've been open is top notch, and they're making that even better with the changes that they're making. But they still have some of their go-tos, such as every Monday, it's buy one, get one free on meatballs. You can't beat that. Tuesdays, it's spaghetti tacos for that Tuesday. Go in and get you some there. Catering is also available, and like all our sponsors, the Spaghetti Shack is deeply involved in giving back to the Sun Devil community, the Tempe community as a whole. You check out what they do on social media, deeply involved in helping others. That's something that y'all can get behind, I'm sure. So check them out. That new location that I mentioned, that's 922 East Apache Boulevard in Tempe. That's 922 East Apache Boulevard. You can find them on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at The Spaghetti Shack, and on Twitter at Spaghetti_Shack. Check out their menu, hours, locations, and more online at thespaghettishack.com. The Spaghetti Shack, takeout for the pasta-loving people. So ASU gets back on the field this Saturday in Seattle at Washington. This is a strong team, a strong program right now. I took a hot take in the beginning of the season, the preseason, thinking that they would maybe slide down a tick. In fact, now that I look at it, I just had the teams mixed up, because what USC has going on right now or doesn't have going on, and what I think might unravel for USC over the course of the season is kind of what I was predicting for Washington in that circumstance. Don't be surprised if USC goes like 8-4 or something like that this year. But Washington right now, absolutely rolling. For it.
I was like making my I don't get a whole lot of season predictions right on the national scale, but the Huskies are making my playoff prediction look pretty good right now. But yeah, still 6 games to go, and this is the Pac-12, so weird things probably will happen.
Yeah, I think the Pac-12, yeah, y'all who watch the TV version of what we do here will see. I think that the Pac-12 going to Pac-12, and there's some madness up ahead, but that's just a little instinct there. Obviously Washington is a team that if you look over the last 10 years or so, and even well before that, I mean, we don't have to take a super long dive on it, but, it's a program that was, dominant in like the early 90s, then into the early 2000s, and then things just completely hit the fan. They had a winless season, right? Yeah. Like in 08 or 09, something like that. Then they got Chris Peterson there, skyrocketed up to the point where they were a playoff team in 2016, went to some Rose Bowls, Fiesta Bowls, that sort of thing. Then Peterson left, things dipped. But, man, they skyrocketed back up. Kalen DeBoer came over from Fresno State, 17-2 record in the season and a half that he has been in charge at Washington. This is one of those scenarios where a lot of Sun Devil fans look at we hear this narrative a lot this year, or at least heard it before this last week, about, the instant effect that Deion Sanders had at Colorado. Kalen DeBoer is that other guy in that equation. And realistically, the guy that should be talked about, not Deion Sanders. It should be Kalen DeBoer, the guy that comes in and has the instant impact on a program.
It's been absolutely sensational to watch what he's been able to do. And of course, the way he was able to kind of engineer some exciting offense at Indiana of all places and build up Fresno State in the fashion that he was able to do that. And then of course, replicating what he was been able to do, reuniting with Michael Penix Jr. and just, from day one, putting together one of the most explosive offensive attacks in the country. And he's kind of, almost like a night and day switch from where Washington's offense was a couple of years before his arrival to where it is at now. And it's just, this year, it's even built upon that success from a year ago to just an absolutely electric display of offense, and just building that by the Bay there, and top 5 team in the country. They've got a good chance at a playoff spot, and in that kind of that Pac-12 playoff drought in all season, the Pac-12 swan song, but still really cool to see what a quality coach has done up there in Seattle.
It's just it's hard to wrap your head around the instant impact that he had last year. They went 11-2. I mean, you think back to that 2021 season, the year before. Like, remember when ASU played up at Washington? I think it was like a cold, maybe windy game, and that Washington team, especially on offense, was as inept as it gets. Like, if you remember that, like, that team could not do anything with the ball. And then you flip things less than a year later, and it's a completely night and day situation. As I mentioned, they went 11.
Was that the year they lost to Montana?
It may have been. But yeah, I mean, it was a team that, like, they had some good defense, but
Dylan
ASU,
Morris was their quarterback.
Yeah, Rashad White had a monster game, and ASU had a bunch of turnovers and things like that, or forced a bunch of turnovers and that sort of thing. So it's wild what can be done in a short period of time. So they went 11-2 last season, year one. However, the 2-11-2, which represents the most recent loss that Washington has had, which is now over a full year ago. Trying to remember when that was, Brad. Do you recall what the opponent was when Washington lost its last game?
You know what? It's all foggy right there. It is so long ago. All the facts are lost to history.
That happened to be, if you can't remember, it was a good day in Tempe, October the 8th of last year. Trenton Bourguet, when he came in and just had the one of the games of his lifetime, really got him on the map, and ASU won 45-38 in Tempe. As I mentioned, a great afternoon there in what was Sun Devil Stadium, of course, at the time. But after that, Washington ripped off 7 straight wins to end last year, including an Alamo Bowl win over Texas. So here they are right now, 6-0. They're number 5 in the country, according to the AP. The second, 5th ranked team ASU will play this year. Of course, USC was a few weeks ago. This is a monster offense. They've scored at least 40 points in each of their first 4 games this season. The fewest they've been held to is 31. I would love for ASU, 31 points for an ASU team right now would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. That's the fewest points that they've scored. They're tied for 5th nationally, and oddly, I think 3rd in the conference, averaging 44.3 points per game. I think Oregon still leads the nation in scoring. USC's right up there. But this as a team, and we'll get into the main reason about that here in a moment, but this is a team just offensively is on fire.
Absolutely. And this is an offense that just loves to get yards in big chunks. Michael Penix Jr. is probably the best deep ball thrower the sport has seen in quite a while, but this offense schematically, with their motions and their shifts, as Kenny Dillingham called it, a lot of eye candy. It's really challenging for a defense. And then we put the execution at the level that they're cooking right now with the weapons that they have. Their NFL talent in the wide receiver room alone is several deep. You got an offensive line that's not giving up a whole lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage, and the quarterback who's just on another planet right now in terms of his play. It's just a really difficult time to stop. And yeah, he's mentioned like their lowest output of the year is 31. It's pretty good.
If they handed out a Heisman at this point in the season, if you ask me, it'd be Michael Penix all the way. I mean, it's really remarkable what he's done. Obviously came over from Indiana. He threw for over 4,600 yards last year, leading that 11-win season. That's an amount that you would think is absolutely impossible to match, to exceed, or even come close to, but he's actually on pace to exceed that. He's got 2,301 yards through 6 games, and this team is going to be playing, obviously, at least 13, probably 14, maybe, more than that. He's got 20 touchdown passes, again, through just 6 games, only 3 interceptions, doesn't turn the ball over a lot, leads the nation, averaging 383.5 passing yards per game. He is just doing it all, someone that will very likely be a very high NFL pick. You just can't say enough about the career resurrection that he has had when he was reunited with the Boar in Washington.
Yeah, it was really cool to see what he was able to do at Indiana in the COVID year, and pull off some big wins and getting the Hoosiers to be kind of relevant for a brief fleeting moment. But what he was able to do since getting healthy, because he's a guy who I believe he's torn both ACLs. He's battled injuries throughout his career, but since he's gotten to Seattle, he's been healthy. And you've seen what he's able to do with that talent, that lefty throw, just the beautiful deep ball, just the quick release. It's really fun, an exciting offense to watch. And when you got the weapons that he has, that Joe will talk about here in a second, I mean, it's just that offense is just a thing of beauty.
And we'll get to those weapons in a moment. We'll touch base here first on the run game. They only average 119 rushing yards per game, but they have 13 rushing touchdowns as a team, average 4.7 yards per carry as a team. So it just shows you that their preference is to pass and no one's stopping them. But when they need to get yards or, short yardage situations around the goal line, they can get it done. Dylan Johnson, he's tied for 4th in the Pac-12 with 5 rushing touchdowns, 340 rushing yards on 61 carries. A name that Sun Devil fans may be wondering about that's been largely absent from the Washington lineup, Daniel Ngata, the transfer from ASU. He's only played in 2 games, 23 rushing yards on 7 carries with a touchdown, no catches, no special teams returns or any other statistics there. So oddly, and that's a guy that, I know we were both real advocates of him getting playing time here. I'm not sure what it is, but just the guy's playing time has been hard to come by for him at the collegiate level. Now then, flipping over to those pass catchers, there are some big dogs. Rome Odunze leads the Pac-12, ranks 2nd nationally, 122.7 receiving yards per game, 40 catches, 736 yards, 6 scores. And even though he's only returned 2 punts this year, he has an 83-yard touchdown punt return to his credit. This guy, they've got some incredible ones on the roster, and this is the number one about them. He's someone that, as the season progresses, should very well be a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award and the first team all-conference Pac-12 as a gimme. This guy is just really, really getting it done, as he did last year.
Yeah, I'm a Biletnikoff voter, and he's going to be high on my list because he is just absolutely sensational. But again, this is a room that is very deep. Jalen Polk, Jeremy Bernard, Giles Jackson hadn't played. He's been battling injuries, came back, and first touch of the year was a touchdown. And this is all with Jalen McMillan sidelined. He's only played in 2 games so far. One of the explosive wide receivers, a guy that'd be many teams' number 1 option. He re-aggravated an injury against Oregon, but yeah, when you have a receiver room this deep and this in tune and this, with a schematic mastermind kind of leading this in Kalen DeBoer, a quarterback able to lead this offense in the way that Michael Penix is able to do. These wide receivers have just been able to put their full talents on display and be a massive challenge for any secondary.
And you mentioned Polk. He is a one-time Texas Tech transfer, ranks 3rd in the conference, 13th nationally, averaging 97.7 receiving yards per game. So, I mean, my goodness, you put the numbers together, and between the 2 of those top dogs for them, I mean, they're averaging well over 200 combined yards per game. He's got 32 catches, 586 yards, 5 touchdowns. Washington's the only team in the country with 2 players actively ranking within the nation's top 15 in receiving yards per game. McMillan, you mentioned him. He's had injury issues, but he still has 20 catches, 311 yards, and a score. Jackson, a one-time Michigan transfer, got his first action last week, 6 catches, 58 yards, and that touchdown that you mentioned. Even before DeBoer arrived, UW has historically been a team that uses its tight ends a lot, and they've got a good one in Jack Westover. He's got 14 catches on the year. 4 of them have been for touchdowns.
Yeah, and all this is made possible with great offensive line play. Again, kind of historically, Washington has always had an offensive line, usually a couple NFL caliber guys that really kind of keep things going on the offensive side. And Michael Penix is not a guy, especially with those ACL injuries over his career, that's going to make a whole lot of plays with his legs. And he's not had to, because that offensive line has given him time. He's only been sacked just 4 times so far this year. Just 3 teams in the country have given up fewer. And so when you're winning things, the battles in the trenches, and you have explosive playmakers and your quarterback has time, it's not surprising to see that Washington's offense is doing the things they're doing.
And one of the key names on that offensive line, Troy Fautanu, 2nd team all Pac-12 honoree last year. Trying to figure out, I didn't get enough information on the internet, a thing that's fairly popular these days. Leaf out town, of course, ASU's offensive linemen. I can't find out if they're related. So maybe they are. I don't know. They're not from like the same city, trying to, do some more underground things. Cause I like seeing these interesting connections in these ball games. Like if you have relatives or brothers or, teammates or things like that, that are going to, or former teammates rather, that are going against one another. So that's a mystery to me. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can figure that out. But flipping over the defense, this is an area where there are some weaknesses for Washington. They just have not been exploited in any considerable way because their offense is so incredible. Statistically, there are some things that, again, leave a little bit to be desired, maybe areas that ASU can take advantage of. So to put some numbers on it, they rank 6th in the Pac-12 in scoring defense, but it's still good for 40th nationally. You've got some good offenses and some good defenses in the conference. They only allow 20.8 points per game. That's not bad, even though that's the middle of the literal pack right now. That's where they are. But some other ones that kind of catch your attention in an interesting way, perhaps for ASU, they rank 8th in the conference in total defense, allowing 394.3 yards per game. They're 9th against the pass, allowing 259 passing yards per game, 7th against the run, 135.3 per game. Tied for the league lead with 8 interceptions. But what seems very atypical for a Washington team is that they're tied for last in the conference with 7 team sacks. Only 4 teams in the nation have fewer right now. That is a really weird thing because they have at least a couple guys, Braylon Trice, ZTF, that historically have gotten to the quarterback in high numbers, and that's not happening this year. That is something that's kind of a weird aberration. Again, it's not really tripping them up. They're undefeated. They're a top 5 team in the country. But we'll see if that's something that over the course of the season becomes a factor.
Yeah, really surprised about the kind of the pressure and the plays behind the line of scrimmage, especially as you mentioned with Trice, ZTF, coming off the edges. They're always, going to put up a pretty good front. And they're, now that they're in year 2 of this defensive scheme, as Kenny Dillingham noted, they're playing on less quarters and they're just kind of more multiple in what they're able to do. And that this is a team that will show more coverages than any team ASU has played to this point. And they got to, UW typically does have a pretty good secondary, some pretty good defensive backs in there that are able to kind of make some plays. But yeah, it's real curious just the lack of just sacks and tackles for loss, especially with that edge talent there. But they're just when you're holding opponents at just around 20 points a game, that's a winning formula when you have an offense the caliber of Washington. But while they're not necessarily making the kind of big plays behind the line of scrimmage, as you mentioned, Joe, 8 picks so far this season. So again, kind of illustrating the quality in that secondary. They're going to be just like the latest in a long stream of teams that ASU is going to have or playing against that has a 5-man secondary kind of in that base formation. So we'll see now with a couple weeks to prepare for this defense, and Trenton Bourguet kind of probably chomping at the bit a little bit after the success that he had a season ago to get this offense back and rolling again. Maybe there are some areas that ASU can exploit on Saturday.
You might see some Phoenix area flair out there on defense for the Huskies. A couple of their top defenders are from this part of the world. Defensive back Dominique Hampton, a Peoria Centennial High grad. He leads the team with 43 tackles and an interception. We talked about Trice. I know you did. I'm pretty sure we both named him as our preseason Pat Tillman Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year heading into this season. He had a strong year, I believe, double-digit sacks last season. A good but not great year so far, statistically at least. 17 tackles, 2 for loss, and a sack. And then the name, or rather some initials that seems like have been around forever. I mean, I know we're still kind of, obviously having the COVID season and guys that have, 6 or even plus year careers. ZTF, Zion Tupuola Fatui. He leads the team with 2 sacks. He's a guy that a couple years ago, it might have even been during the COVID season when Washington had a great run. He's a guy that at various points in his career has been one of the better defenders in the Pac-12 conference, especially when it comes to getting to the quarterback. So he's doing a little bit about that this year. So he's someone, these guys, Trice as well, they have the ability to get to you. So with ASU having a beleaguered offensive line, which hopefully gets healthier this week, it seems like they will, they might be able to have a day on defense that has been different from what they've had throughout the course of the season so far.
And that's one thing I'm going to be watching is ASU's tackle against, those edge rushers. And we've seen before where, guys of some renown, maybe are struggling a little bit and kind of kickstart their seasons against ASU, whether it's offensive or defensive side. So,
kickers. I mean, how many kickers over time have nailed like 52 yarders when their career long was like 40 or something like that? It's a wild thing.
Yeah, the ASU seems to be the tonic for what ails a lot of these players. So we will hopefully see, maybe not see Trice and ZTF kind of get things going against an ASU offensive line that, again, should be kind of getting some reinforcements back with Class, Briggs. Bram Walden has been doing pretty well so far this season in terms of the pass protection. So ASU is going to be needing to probably throw the ball a little bit more than they would normally like, just because of the firepower that the Washington offense brings to this matchup. And you got to kind of keep pace. But I do think that this is a defense that can be run upon. And if ASU's offensive line can be, getting healthy a little bit, find a groove and sustain drives, get Cam Skattebo. Maybe if you get DeCarlos Brooks back as well into that mix with that physical run style that he has, perhaps mix in a little Kyson Brown here and there. We've seen the creativity that Kenny Dillingham has brought to the play calling. Maybe get some of those wide receivers who have seen time in the backfield, whether it's Gio Sanders, Elijah Badger, Melquan Stovall, get them involved in the run game as well, sustain those drives, convert third downs. This could be a defense that allows ASU's offense to keep them in the game into the second half.
And before we jump into our keys to the game and our game score predictions, a key for you if you're a Sun Devil fan is to gear up at Cactus Sports. They are, of course, located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe. With them, you can put together the perfect Sun Devil fit from head to toe in just one stop. They've got the best ASU merchandise around there at Cactus Sports. At Cactus Sports, they are as passionate about making sure you look your Sun Devil best as they are about supporting the maroon and gold on game day. So stock up, gear up there. We keep talking about, if you're in Arizona, the seasons are going to be changing maybe kind of soon here. We got double digits, so that's cool. If you live outside Arizona where it's actually maybe cold right now, get yourself some hoodies, some long sleeves, but, rock the tank tops all year, sleeveless like I like to do. Whatever it is you're looking for, if it's maroon and gold, any of the colors of the Sun Devil rainbow, you can get it all there at Cactus Sports. If you can't make it to that Mill Avenue location, start putting together your ultimate Sun Devil gear wish list online at cactussports.com. Go ahead, stock up, put together a big dog order. They offer free domestic ground shipping on orders over $75. Be sure to, of course, follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Cactus Sports AZ. Cactus Sports, ASU alumni, owned since 1992. Think local, buy local, be local. So why don't you go ahead and get us started? What would you call your first key of this game?
Get to Michael Penix and fast. It's going to be I think the tail of the tape. If you can get to Penix and rattle him a little bit, maybe cause them to force into some turnovers that we saw like last year with the pick six, where he was under and rifled one off the back of a lineman's helmet and into the waiting arms of Jordan Clark. We've seen the pass rush be revitalized this year under defensive coordinator Brian Ward, with BJ Green, Prince Dorbaugh leading the charge. We'll see if Clayton Smith's able to get back from injury, but Brian Ward's going to have to call a masterpiece of the game to kind of slow down this Husky offense, and that's going to start with getting behind the line of scrimmage and getting past this offensive line that we mentioned has been really solid in pass protection. But ASU has had some quality, a quality resurgence in the pass rush. They've got some of the horses to do it. They know that they're going to be passing the ball around a lot. And I think ASU's only hope is if they can get behind the line of scrimmage and, get like 3-4 sacks, but also perhaps most importantly, get a lot of pressures, hurries, and force Penix into some uncharacteristic mistakes.
My first key probably includes a wish and a prayer. You got to fill up a big old shot of rum for Joe Boo. I don't know what you got to do, but you got to try to catch them slipping. You want to hope for that whole hangover effect, that trap game, whatever sort of term you want to put on it. That game against Oregon, that's a rivalry game for Washington, for both teams, obviously. A huge one that put them in the driver's seat in this conference, keeps them well in the loop for a playoff position. So you just got to kind of hope that everything that went into that emotional, close, tight, late victory for Washington, maybe they're just slipping a little bit here and there. Maybe they're overlooking Arizona State. Maybe they're overlooking the fact that ASU's 1-5 and, has had a lot of deficiencies and injuries and other things that have brought them down over these first 6 games. So if there are ever any areas where they're, again, just kind of slipping here or there, you got to take the best advantage for that. I know that includes, again, a spiritual component, hoping that something happens to Washington. But anywhere you can slice it, when you play an elite team like this, you got to try to find any advantage, any opportunity that you can.
So my second key for Sun Devil upset victory, and while we talked about the pass rush being, one of the best keys to limit the Washington offense, the absolute best tactic is just have them not on the field, and that's to You got to sustain drives if you're the Arizona State offense. You got to convert on third down. The Huskies are 113th in the nation in terms of third down defense and conversion percentage. So this is an opportunity for ASU if they can put together, 8, 9, 10 play drives and maybe slow things down, kind of, run counter to what we saw, what Kenny Dillingham's kind of instincts of just running a kind of a more up tempo, fast paced offense. Convert those third downs, keep the time of possession in your favor. Run Cam Skattebo, effectively. Hopefully the offensive line is able to kind of open some better holes in that run game. But this could be a situation where you see that some creative uses of picking up those third and mediums, third and shorts. This could be a game where you see Elijah Badger, again, approach double-digit receptions, if not touches as well, because you need the ball in your big-time playmakers' hands and those key moments, those third downs that so often continue to dictate the outcome of a game.
So to piggyback off that, the offense for me needs to be extremely composed. Husky Stadium is going to be rocking. And when that stadium's rocking, it gives you quite possibly the best environment in the Pac-12 conference. So that means, Trenton Bourget, you got to have laser focus. Obviously, we're, a part of that is preventing turnovers, things like that. But I'm talking just on a more simplified level, just having that composure, having the offensive line have composure. Don't let that noise that will be there get to you and get false starts or other penalties or procedural things like that. So we're talking about a very, very basic element of the game of football, but that's going to be integral is for this offense. Obviously, the team as a whole, but especially on offense, to be able to operate with some ice in your veins, are going to need it on Saturday.
All right, key number 3 is you got to be plus multiple in the turnover battle. ASU has a single turnover over the first half of the season. Single, just one. Like, not even plural. You can't even get there. That's absurd. There's been some weird turnover luck, especially for a defense that's been pretty good, and especially making plays behind the line of scrimmage, getting high sacks, a lot of tackles for loss, just being overall disruptive, but just the turnovers are not there. To get the upset win as 27, 28-point underdogs on the road against the number 5 team in the country, you got to come away, +2, +3, +4. You got to kind of create your own fortune, steal some possessions. ASU has the defensive talent to do so. But for some reason or other, they haven't come in the first half of the season. Now it's time to make up for lost time.
The third and final one for me, because every possession, all field position is going to be crucial in this game for ASU to claim any advantages that it possibly can. You want to see that solid punting effort that you saw from me and Hershey in that Colorado game. The team punting needs to be at a high level, because if you give them short fields or they have the athletes that can take them the distance with ease, that will be plays that are not just momentum plays that can shift things, but obviously impact the scoreboard tremendously. I talked about that composure element. If you're giving them short fields, or again, if you allow for like a long punt return, a kickoff return, or whatever the case may be, if you're missing close field goals, I know I opened this talking specifically about punting, but this can really apply to the entire special teams, the kick game. That needs to be on point, because you simply cannot give this Washington offense advantages. You can't give them short fields. You can't have, 30-yard punts to where they get the ball at midfield. That's a recipe for disaster. We need to see the best special teams game of the season from Arizona State for the Sun Devils to have a viable chance in this game.
All right, this is how we see this game playing out. I'll start things off, and I do think that Arizona State has a good defense. Early on in the season, I thought, okay, we'll see how things play out. I think that the qualifiers are removed. I think they are a good defense. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily they're going to be locking teams down like the 96 or 2013 editions of the ASU defense, but I think kind of given where they are right now, the things they've gone through, and especially the improvements in the pass rush and just kind of the overall schematic mindset of Brian Ward, it's a good defense. But this offense is falling firmly in that category, kind of in USC, where it's just like you're not going to shut them down. You got to be able to limit the damage. And I just don't see that ASU is going to be able to do that as of yet. I think the offense is going to have some moments where they got some playmakers. I think Jalen Conyers might be looking to have a bounce back game. I think Elijah Badger is kind of hitting that stride. They were force feeding him a week or 2 weeks ago against Colorado. I expect to see him have another big time game, a lot of success. Cam Skattebo behind a hopefully better offensive line. But I just don't see that ASU is going to have the firepower over the course of 4 quarters or 60 minutes. And they might be able to get off to a fast start on the road with the hangover effect Joe mentioned. But I just don't think that ASU is going to be able to go blow for blow, in the Husky Stadium against Washington no shame in losing the number 5 team on the road as the Huskies take this one 38-21.
This one being on the road is a big deal. ASU obviously has, and I guess with the end of the Pac-12 conference and Washington moving off to the Big Ten, such a really cool, weird, odd statistic of that 20-plus year win streak against Washington in Tempe. On the road, they've had some wins, yes, but against the really good Washington teams of late, like 2016, 2018, ASU has not been successful up there. That 16 game was an absolute blowout. The 18 game was competitive. It's a really tough place to play, like I said, and it's tough on any Saturday. They put together a good crowd no matter how things are going. When you're the number 5 team that has a very viable chance at winning the conference and going to the playoff as you merge your way into the Big Ten conference, things are going to be insane there, especially, again, after coming off that huge win over Oregon. That's going to be difficult for ASU because that's going to require them to battle that crowd instantly and take them out of that. And that is a tough thing to do, again, especially when you face the firepower of the Washington offense, which they could put things out of control in a hurry. So I do believe that ASU's defense will be able to battle them. It's just a tough offense versus offense matchup. I think that there are going to be just some plays that sway things in the opposite direction, whether it's turnovers, whether it's something on special teams, just things that are, field shortening plays or pick sixes, just momentum plays that'll swing out of ASU's way. I'm just really impressed by what Washington has done all season long. I didn't think they were going to pull out that win against Oregon. They're getting it done. You have to have all the respect in the world for Kalen DeBoer, for Michael Penix, and the things that they're doing. They're playing ball. They're doing it the right way. Credit to them and to the fans. That's something that's fun to see when that's happening with your team. So I think that this is just going to be one where Washington does what people probably expect them to do. I see ASU just having a tough time really going blow for blow with this team on the road. If this were in Tempe, not sure if I would pick a win, but I think I would pick a more competitive game because, ASU tends to do that for the most part against some major teams like they did against Colorado and USC, even in defeat. So I see this one being an outcome that just isn't too close for ASU. I'm picking a 42-20 Washington win. For more information on the Huskies, for this matchup, everything ASU, get tuned in, get locked in, be a subscriber of devilsdigest.com. If you are a true Sun Devil and you're not on that message board, taking in all that content every day, what are you doing? Get on there. There's a lot of discussions going on, a lot of really interesting topics there, especially most recently, real deep dive. A lot of transparency on what's going on behind the scenes with ASU in the NIL capacity. Those are things that are important to know about. Obviously, you get a ton of coverage of football. We're getting basketball season coming up here in a couple weeks. You're going to get a lot there. And as things progress, just more and more content from devilsdigest.com. As you may know by now, if you've got a subscription to Devil's Digest, that gets you premium content across the Rivals.com network. You can learn about other teams, other sports, recruiting, the whole gamut there. You got to be locked in if you're a true Sun Devil to devilsdigest.com on the Rivals.com network.
So as Joe and I have outlined how ASU is going to be trying to battle a number 5 team from the Pacific Northwest, this is what's coming up next is a bit of the conversation I had with a guy who just pulled off that exact feat. Head coach of the volleyball team, JJ Van Niel, who led his Sun Devils up to Oregon, took down the number 5 ranked Ducks, and straight set fashion, no less. So ASU's now 18-2 on the year and inside the top 20 after a period of several years of struggles. The Sun Devil volleyball is now kind of an upswing. So here's an excerpt from that conversation. You can find the full podcast episode on the Speak of the Devils feed and on the Speak of the Devils YouTube channel. All right, Coach. So I want to start off, looking back at a pretty eventful weekend. Obviously, the huge day on Sunday we'll talk about in a moment. But unfortunately, kind of, before that, a tough loss to Oregon State in 5 sets. How did you see the team bounce back or kind of react to that loss and maybe set the stage for the big win on Sunday?
Well, I didn't, of course, you never know how they're going to react. You hope they're going to react well. I think it was certainly like a good wake-up call. Oregon State's always a tough place to play. I've had quite a few memorable, frustrating matches up there. I didn't know how we'd react. I did feel like they were not very happy, at the end of that match. I think sometimes when you're on a team, it's like, 20 minutes later, everyone's kind of just joking around, having fun. I didn't feel that on our bus ride, that's for sure. It wasn't the most enjoyable bus ride, I think, for anyone. Not that anyone was doing anything wrong. I just think it was a somber, it was a tough 5-setter, and it was one of those things where I think once you get to a 5-setter, there's a lot of randomness that happens. And I'm sure USC felt that way against us because, they led in a lot of categories in that 4th set. They completely demolished us, and then we came back and we won in 5th, and it was like the exact same thing happened, except for it was Oregon State doing it to us. In the 4th set, we beat them like 25-12 or whatever it was. I don't know. It was quite a big difference, and we beat them in plenty of categories. And then you go to 5th, and anything happens, and they came out on top. So that one was certainly a tough one to swallow, and I think the team was pretty awesome the next day. I know when it was Mary's birthday, and we were down for video. They were really locked in for our video sessions against Oregon. They were locked in at practice. I think there was a different level of, I don't know if it was different. You could feel it in that practice the day before. But yeah, we just came out and we kind of executed on a bunch of things we talked about being really important to try to do well against Oregon. It worked out in our benefit. So it's cool.
Yeah, obviously a huge win, a tremendous bounce back and response by your team, taking down the number 5 team in the country on the road. I believe it was the first top 5 win for the program in about a decade. How big do you think that win was, not just maybe in the moment, but kind of, another feather in the cap and kind of, setting the course on this, on your vision for the Sun Devil program moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's always a big deal because when you can take down, a team of that quality, it gives you some confidence you can hang with some people, and we haven't played a bunch of ranked teams. I think we played a bunch of really good teams, and I think especially early on, like some of the rankings are just pretty random. I mean, obviously, there's always like Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Stanford, Texas, but then you just get a lot of randomness with the rest of them. So I think we've played a bunch of really good matches against some really good teams, but I think the fact that they were so highly ranked and the fact that we could come in and bounce back, I think that just gives our team, some confidence, and they were pretty fired up about it. And now we got to go make sure we don't have a letdown, right? When you can, it's not very often you can knock off a top 10 team, top 5 team. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, obviously, so far this season, a win over a top 5 program, number 17 in the polls, 18-2 overall record. Did you expect this level of success this early in year 1?
No, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I did. I did think, my team knows me, and there's never really matches that we're going in thinking we're not winning. There's just a competitive nature of kind of how we are. But I did see something pretty special in the spring, I think, with just the way the culture has come together and how hard the kids are working and kind of some of the things they did in the spring. I was excited of like, oh, I think we can surprise some people. But I think if you would have said, hey, you're going to be 18-2 towards the end of Pac-12 play, I would have said, I'm not sure. So it's definitely been a fun ride so far, and we got to keep it up. I mean, if we still got some work to do, that's for sure. And the Pac-12's very easy. We're going to play in a very tough couple places here this weekend coming up.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our great guests on this episode. And, of course, as ASU is heading the home stretch of the season, a lot to discuss, a lot to cover, and we'll be with you each and every week here on this feed and also on social media. You can follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Instagram at Speak of the Devils, on YouTube and Facebook as well. And you can give me a follow on everything at BDenny29.
Yeah, and you can follow me at Joe Healy 42. As we close things out for this week, a huge thank you and shout out to our awesome sponsors, as always, and of course, including Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to unexpected medical conditions. And Sun Devil Family Charities also has volunteer and sponsorship opportunities that you can learn about on their website, which is sundevilfamily.org. You can get a lot of information, not only about how you can help them out, but their backstory, their origin story, how they came to be, how they supported a former Sun Devil football player when they first began. You can check them out online again at sundevilfamily.org, and be sure to follow them on Instagram at sundevilfam and on Twitter at sundevil_family.
And once you're done supporting our amazing lineup of sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week to recap ASU's Battle by the Bay and look ahead to the homecoming matchup against Washington State.